Hi guys, my name is Joshyvibe, and in today's tutorial we are going to be implementing an authentication system in Node.js using Express.js. This is the finished product that we are going to be building from scratch. Here we can sign up. Now let's try to register for this. Joshi, then Joe, praise. Let's use joe@gmail.com. Let's put in the password. Let's register. Okay, we have been redirected to login. Now let's put Joshi and also input the wrong password and see if we can log in with the wrong password. Password incorrect. Okay, now let's put in the correct password. Hello, welcome to Node.js authentication tutorial. Now we can log out here. If we try to access this sign up, it will redirect us back to the home because we are currently authenticated. If you also try to access the login, it will not work because we are currently authenticated. But once we log out, we now have access to the login. Then we can also create an account. Okay, as usual, buckle up your shoes, get ready, and let's start coding. See you in the next video. Guys, welcome back to the tutorial. I have opened up my VS Code, and I have also created a folder, the Node Authentication tutorial folder, where we are going to be implementing our codes and installing all the necessary libraries that we are going to use to set up the authentication system. Without wasting much of your time, let's start coding. The first thing we have to do is to set up our node inside our folder. And to set up our node, we use npm init, enter. You go ahead, keep pressing enter till it sets up all the necessary dependencies and goes ahead to install. Okay, now let's open this folder. We'll have package.json file here, which means our node has been set up. Now the next thing we are going to do is to install express.js and also set up our virtual environment. To do that, we do npm install express. We'll also install EJS, which is a templating language that will allow us to template our views inside HTML. So then we'll do --save. Let's install. Okay, this will go ahead and install the necessary dependencies. Okay, once the installation is done, you will have the package log.json. Then we'll also have the node modules, which comprises everything for the framework express.js that will enable us to build our web application with it. Okay, now that we have done this, the next thing we have to do is to set up our virtual environment. And to set up our virtual environment, we do npm i --save -dev. Then we'll do nodemon. Nodemon is a library that will help us to refresh our server anytime we make changes, instead of us to be terminating our terminal anytime we make changes. With nodemon, we don't need to be terminating our terminal. It will automatically refresh our server for us. So let's go ahead and enter this so it will set up. Now this is set up. Let's go inside our package.json here. Inside our script, we are going to change this to capture the nodemon that we set up here. And what we're going to do is, inside this script that here that will have test, I'm going to replace this with dev start. Now we are going to remove this echo error, no test, blah 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 stuff here. We are going to change it to be nodemon, then server.js. We are going to set up the server.js shortly. The server.js is where we are going to build everything that we are going to use to set up the authentication. So that is what we are going to be running. And with this setup, if we want to run our terminal, what we just need to do is npm run dev start. This will run our server, but it will not work right now because we do not have the server.js set up. So we'll come back to it. Okay, there's a mistake here, sir. This is dev, not deck. Okay, let's save this. Okay, now that this is set up, let's go ahead and even create our server.js file. So let's call it server.js. Okay. Error. .js. Next thing we are going to do before we continue is to quickly install some libraries that we use to build our authentication. One of the libraries is bcrypt. Bcrypt is going to help us to hash our password inside our user login and registration to enable us not to be able to have a raw password when a user registers and also wants to log in, to prevent from attack and also help us to compare password. So that is what bcrypt does. So I'm going to install bcrypt by running npm i bcrypt. Then we're also going to install passport. Passport is what is going to help us to build our authentication. Let me just give a scenario what passport does to a real life perspective. Let's assume you go to a party where there is a bouncer at the entrance of the party and you are asked for your invitation card. When you present your invitation card and the bouncer verifies that you were invited for the party, you're allowed inside the party. Now, let's apply this scenario to web development. This is where Passport comes in. Passport is a security tool for your web apps that checks if users are allowed access to certain parts of your website. That's basically what Passport does. And to install it too, since we are already setting up the bcrypt, what we just need to do is also put passport, then passport -local. Let me install this. Let me also install a few other libraries we will need. We will need libraries like Express Flash. We also need libraries like Express Section. Express Flash is like a sticker note that you use to remember things temporarily. So in web apps, it helps you to store short messages like success or error messages that you want to show to the user after a specific action, such as logging in or submitting a form. Whereas Express Session, let's picture it as a special stamp you get at an amusement park. When you enter into the park, let's say you visit a website, they give you a unique stamp. That is what is called a session ID to remember you. So that was session ID does for us. Now, we're also going to need method override. So what is method override? Let me also give a scenario. You can think of it like a magical translator, something that helps the browser to understand simple actions. With method override here, you can send more complex instructions to the web server using just those simple actions, like having a translator convert your simple gestures into powerful requests, so you can do more with less effort. So what method override does is that it helps your browser to understand simple actions like clicking links and also submitting forms. Okay, now with this being understood, let me quickly install these libraries so we can start building. As usual, we'll do npm i express-session, then express-flash, then method override. All right, we have it. Now let me press enter. Okay, now let me clear this, close this. We'll come back to try to run our server later. Now let's start building inside our server.js. First thing first, we use if statement to process our virtual environment. So we'll do if process.env, then .node_env is not equals to production. Go ahead and allow us to use the virtual environment we created for development, which is .env.config. This will allow us to use the virtual environment we set up locally because we are currently in development. We are not in production. Let's first of all set up the variable for our Express framework that we downloaded. Express equals to require, then Express. The next thing we are going to do is also set up the app variable for our Express equals to Express. Okay, next let me also set up the bcrypt we installed. Bcrypt equals to require, then bcrypt. Okay, let me just duplicate this so we can also do for the other libraries we installed. Okay, for this one we'll change this to be for the passport, then I'm going to change this to be for the flash. For here we capture Express Flash, then we'll change this one to be for section Express. Now the next thing we are going to do is to also, let me quickly set up for the method override equals to require, then method override. Okay, now let's save this. The next thing we are going to do is to set up our views. So let me quickly set up for our home. We'll do app.get home, then comma request response, then arrow function. Inside the arrow function, we do request dot render. Side here we'll get our index.ejs. For this should be normal bracket, not curly bracket. Okay, now we have set up for our index. Let's save this. Let's activate our app. Let's use our server, local server 3000. All right, so what I'm gonna do inside here, let's create a folder. Let's call it views. Inside the views, we're gonna create a new file for index.ejs, which is where we are going to post our HTML. So I have a note for our index already. Quickly copy it so we can see. Put this here, save it. Now inside here we have registered the views for our index.html, which is our home. Now we can access it from our server. So let me open our terminal. Let's try to run this run dev start. Okay, something is wrong. Let's come back here. We have a problem inside here. We did not put the T for our dev start. Save it, close this. Let me clear. Now let's run our server again. Okay, so our server is working. Let's go back here, go home and see. Okay, so this is our home. We are currently home. This is the index template that I imported, and it's working currently. The next thing we are now going to do is to implement the authentication so we can be able to use the login sign up. As you can see, we don't have that set up yet, so we are going to now start implementing that. Remember, the code is going to be available on GitHub. In case you are wondering how quick I was able to build on the index, I just have it already built. So for this template, all I just needed was to copy it and paste it inside our index.ejs to test run our server to make sure it's working. So yeah, with this setup ready, let's start setting up our index to allow us to be able to log in and also register and log out as well. So inside our server, we are now going to set up a function that will allow us to do that. Now, first of all, what we're going to do is to set up the app.get for our login and also for registrar. Then we'll go ahead and set up the post method for our form to help us be able to get information from our form for the register and also login. The way I'm going to implement this, I'm not going to use any database. We are going to save our variables or the password and username registration. We are going to save it directly as a variable inside our server.js so that we can use it immediately to test run what we are building. It's just for development purpose. I'm only going to be storing the information that we get from our register and also login inside a variable. So first of all, what I'm going to do is set up that variable here. We'll call it users equal to empty array. We'll use it below. Now let me duplicate this so we can also get the render for our index. For this one, we'll call it login. Now inside here, we'll change this to be for login. We'll also do this for register. Change this to be also register. Okay, now with this setup, the next thing we are going to do is now set up our app.post for our form data. Once we are done with that, we'll then set up the authentication process using Passport. Let's quickly start setting up the authentication process. But before we continue, let me save this. Go to our views. Let's create another file for login.ejs, and let's create another one for register.ejs. Okay, now with this setup, what we're gonna do is inside here, we'll come back to them, but let's go back here. For us to be able to build these passports so that we will not have so much code here, I'm going to create another file, then we'll initialize it here so that we can be able to use every information that we get for that file. We'll just call it directly to be able to use it inside our server.js. I'm going to create another file called passport.config.js. So we're going to call it passport-config.js. Okay. Now inside this file, what I'm going to do is set up the passport authentication process inside it, then initialize it inside our server.js to be able to set up the authentication post for the login and also for the register there. So the first thing I'm going to do is use const local strategy. Now inside this local strategy, we'll make equals to require. Let's set it to be passport local. Okay, now do dot strategy. Next we do const bcrypt got to require. Now inside this we'll do bcrypt. Next thing we're going to do is set up a function, an initializer function, to be able to get our username, user ID. So what I'm going to do is, once I'm done setting this function up, we'll now go back to our server.js to build our form, capture the app, the post for register and also for login. So here I will call passport, then get user. Okay, we are using username, we'll use username, then get user by username, then get user by ID. Okay, here create another const variable for ticket user equals to, we'll make it an async so that we'll be able to use await side here, put username, then password, then done. Now we'll create an arrow function. Inside the arrow function, create another user. Inside this const get user by username, then we'll put username here. Then we'll use an if statement. If user equals null, return done, null, false. Then we'll get a message, no user with that username. Now what we're gonna do next, use try. Inside the try we'll say if use await bcrypt.compare, trying to compare the password. Let's do also user.password. Then we'll return done, null, user, then else. We'll return done, then null, false, then another message, password incorrect. Now let's also do catch. We'll do catch error. Now inside the catch error we'll do return done. It's coming at the wrong place. Come here, return done. We initialize the error here. Okay, now with this setup, what we are going to do next, now remember everything we are doing is inside this function initialize. So inside the same function we'll come down and set up the passport.use. Inside the passport.use we'll do new local strategy, then inside we'll call on the username field. Now we'll set this to be username because it's the username we are going to be using. Then comma here, then authenticate user. Okay, next we also do passport.serialize user. Side here we'll do user, then done. Create an arrow function, done. Inside the done we'll do null, user. Next we'll do passport serialize user, serialize I'm doing it's the same thing. Okay, then side here we'll do id, done. Then also another arrow function here, down, do return done, then null, get user by id, we'll do id. Okay, now with this setup, come below here, do module.spot side, do equals to initialize. Now let's cross check and make sure everything is set for our application. The first thing we did was to do the const local require passport local dot strategy. Then we got the bcrypt, which will help us to hash our password. Then after we went ahead to create a function initialize passport, get user username, then also get the user by ID. We went ahead to create a variable const to authenticate the user async. Then inside the const get user we set the username password done. Thereafter we got a user. Inside the user we set it to be equals to get user by username. Thereafter we checked if the user is equals to null, then we return done, no user found, meaning we do not get any user. Then we went ahead to use try to bcrypt and compare the password. What we are doing here is to compare the hashed password with the user password. So if we go ahead to compare it and they don't match each other, we return password incorrect. Thereafter, once we are done with this, we catch an error, any other error we have, we also return it. Thereafter, we went ahead to set password.use, new local strategy for the username field equal to username, authenticate user, password.serialize user. We went ahead to return the user by ID. Thereafter, we initialize this function here by setting the module.exports equal to initializer. Okay, now with this setup, let's go back to, let me save this. Let's go back to our server.js to be able to have this work. We have to initialize it inside our server.js to be able to use it. Now let's go back to our server.js. First, let's initialize the passport. For the passport config.js we set. So I set const initialize passport. Let's set it to be equals to require. Once we get it, we'll come down here. Then we'll do initialize passports. Inside here we'll call on passport, then we'll set the username, arrow function, users.find, then we'll set user. Okay, then user.username equals to username. All right, comma. We'll also do the same for the ID. Users.find user.id equals to ID. Okay. Now with this setup, the next thing we're going to do is, let me quickly set up the EJS view engine, which is the templating language we are using. So app.set, side it with do view engine. Now below we'll also do for app.use express.url encoded. Okay, this is .not slash for our URLs to encode it. So what we're gonna do inside here is make it to be extended. Then let's do extended. We set it to false. Now the next thing I'm gonna also do is to now set up our post for register. So I'm gonna come below here. Let's copy this, change this to be post. Now inside this, what we'll have to do is to set up the form variable field. Since we are setting this up inside the user variables that we set up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this to be async, so that inside here I'll remove this and use try. Inside the try I will do const hashed password, make it to be await, then we decrypt it, decrypt.hash. This is what is going to help us to hash our password. Make it to be request.body.password, make it to be 10. Now next we'll set the users.push. We'll first of all get ID. We'll set the ID to be a date now to help us get the date. Okay, so we'll set it to .string. Next we'll set for the username. The username will do request.body.username, comma. We'll do, okay, let me quickly copy this. So we'll do for first name, last name, and also email. Next we'll do response.redirect. We'll set it to be login. Once you register, we'll be redirected to login. Then we'll also, let me bring this down so we can do for catch. Inside the catch, what we're gonna do is set for response.redirect. Let's set this to be for register. Now below here we have to close this curly bracket, close this. Okay, save. Now let me come here. Let's set up also for the login. We'll do the same thing now. .post. Inside here do login, passport.authenticate local. We'll set the success redirect. For the success redirect, we'll set it to home. For the failure redirect, we'll set it to be login, so that when a redirect is failed. And also for failure flash, let's set for failure flash to be true, so we can be able to see any message for any error that is failed. Let me put some space here. Okay, now with this setup, the next thing I'm going to do is to set up the variable for our section that will enable us to get ID whenever we are signing up or logging in. Now what I'm going to do is, because I have to set the secret section, I'm going to use that here. I'm going to create another file. I'm going to call it .env. Now inside our .env, I'm going to set our secret section. So let's call it section_secret. Let's make it to be password. I'm going to show this inside my Git when we are committing and shipping this. So what I'm going to do is create another file .gitignore. Inside it, I'm going to have the files that I want to ignore. So I don't want node modules to be inside Git when we are committing it. So let's put that. Also the .env. I'm not committing that. Okay. Now let's save this. Let me also save this. Remove this. Now inside here, let's set up the const variable for our section. What I'm going to do is, let me come here and do it. First, let's set up the app.use for flash. Let's call flash. Let's also do for the section app.use section. Inside the section, we'll create the secret. For this secret, we'll do process.env. Then inside here, we'll do another dot. We'll paste. Then we'll do for the resave. We'll set it to be false. Then we'll also save uninitialized. Set it to also false. We're good to go for here. The next thing I'm going to do now is to also set the app.use for our initialize. App.use. Let's set the one for passport.initialize. Then also app.use for our passport section. Passport.action. Okay. Let me also do app.use for our method override. Now inside this one, we'll set our method. Let me go back here. Okay, since I have copied this, let me remove it. Let's copy the one. First one is for my register. Let's copy it. Go back here. Inside the register.ejs file, let's paste this. Now what I have done here is to set up the register form that you saw when I was showing you guys the finished product in the intro of the tutorial. Let me change this to be node register is the title. We have login. Now this will enable us to be able to go back to login or register. These are the nav links, and here I also set up the form. Inside the form we have post, which is the method, and also the action, which is the register URL. These are the label inputs for all the fields we have. We have for username, first name, last name, email, and also password. So yeah, basically that's everything that we need that is going to work with our JavaScript. So let's go back to our notes, come down here, let's copy this one for our login, remove it, come back here, let's paste it here, go up and also change this to be node. The same process, we have our form here for the login. Then I also set up the messages.error to help us check and also show us any message error when we try to log in and it's not working. Now with this setup and everything looking as good, all we can do is to go here. Let's go back to our browser, refresh this. Okay, something is wrong. Let's go to our terminal. Let's see what we are having. Waiting for 5 changes before starting. Okay, I think there is but I made a mistake here. I'm using 2 double express. It's only one express.url encoded, then extended first. Okay, let's save this. Okay, our server is back working. Go back, let's refresh. All right, now let's try to log in. You see, we do not have any account. Now let me even try putting anything and see. Let's see what it will show. Okay, it did not work. It's meant to show me maybe an error to indicate that we do not have that particular account or whatever, but it did not bring up anything, meaning something is wrong. So let's go back here and see where we are having the error from. Okay, here line 17, we are doing username. Inside the username we are saying users.find, users equals user.username. What we are doing is cause initialize passport, and we do require. Let me close this. I can see the problem here. We set the user here without using const. I set it as if I was building with Python, so I forgot to put const there. Now let's see is there any. Okay, our server is working now, no error there. Let's refresh this. Something is still wrong. Okay, we are using users here. I think that's what we use below instead of user. Yeah, we use users. So let's save, go back, refresh this. Okay, now let me put Joshi. Just put in this and see. Okay, refuse to connect. Okay, you can see where we are getting the error from. Line 8 inside the passport. See where you can see no. See what I wrote down here. So let's go back to here. Line 8. This is meant to be false. False. This is where it's meant to return us no user with that username. Okay. Now let's go back. Refresh this again. Okay, no user with that username. So you can see this is working now. Let's try it again. The same issue. Let's go to sign up. Let me use Joe, praise, and let's also put in password, register. Okay, we have been redirected to our login because our registration was successful. Okay, so if you want to know if our registration was successful, what I can do is to do console.log somewhere here. so we can be able to see the information that is coming from push that we are saving all the users. So what I can do is to console.log users, so we can see it inside our console here. So let me do it here, console.log users, save. Okay, so now what we have to do, because we are not saving it in our database, we have to refresh this again, go back to sign up. Let's use JoshyVibe now. Let's put in the same job praise, put in everything. Then let's also, you see, let's go here and see. You see, we are still having issues. You can see the first name is showing us undefined and undefined, but you can see what happened to our password. Our password was hashed into this information we are seeing here, and this is the ID, this is the date information. But for this first name and last name that is showing undefined, means something is wrong. We have to figure out why it's not saving. So what we'll do is inside let's go to our register. Let's make sure what we have ID name. Oh, you see, the issue is from here. I used underscore for the first name here and also underscore for the last name. So save it. Let's go back here, refresh. Let's sign up again. JoshyVibe. Let's do Joe. Let's do praise Joe. Okay, register. Now let's go back here and see. Now you can see the way our information is stored here. We have every details showing to us as a string. You come back here, see the way we are handling it here, right? We have every information showing to us as a string, including the password, but our password is hashed because of the way we handle it, because of this function we set up. We decrypt and hashed the password. Let's try to log in and see if we can log in. Let's input, I think I use JoshyVibe and log in. Okay, you see, we are able to log in. Hello, welcome to Node.js. Let's log out. We can't log out because I have not set up the logout here, but we can log in, which is good. Now if we try to access the register, we are still doing that. If we also try to access the login, we can still do that. So let's go and deal with this, set it up in such a way whereby immediately you're logged in, you will not be able to access the login or sign up anymore. You will be redirected anytime you try to access that. So let's go back to our server.js and set up that function that will handle that for us. First, let me set up the function for our logout. So what I will do is app.delete. We'll use delete. Now this is what is going to help us to be able to use delete. Remember when we installed the method override that we initialized here as app const method override require method override? You remember when we set it up here, we are using it here. Now I remember I told you guys that you should think of method override as a magical translator. Yeah, sometimes web browsers can only understand simple actions like links or submitting form, but with the help of method override you can send more complex instructions to the web server using just those simple actions. It's like having a translator convert your simple gestures into powerful requests. Method override is what helps us to achieve that. So that is why we are using this app.delete. We are overriding app.post to be able to get the app.delete. It is because of the method override that made that possible for us. So now inside this app.delete, we'll set up the logout function. So what I'm going to do inside here, as usual, then we'll set this to be logout, then we will set request, then response, arrow function. We'll do request.logout, log out the user by calling the request.logout. That is what this request.logout is for. Now inside the request.logout, we set up for error, right? Now inside here, another arrow function. Inside the arrow function, we will do if error, console.log the error for us, error. All right, next what we'll do is to redirect the user to a logged out page or a different route. In this case, we are going to redirect the user to login. So we'll do response.redirect. We'll set it to be login. Save this. Now the next function we are going to set up is the one that will help us to check when a user is authenticated, so that when a user is authenticated, it will not be allowed to access the login or the sign up pages anymore, because you're already authenticated. There's no use for you to access that. So we'll set up a function. We call it check not authenticated. Inside here we'll do request, then response, what we'll do is to use if statement, if request dot is authenticated, if request dot is authenticated, return response redirect home, meaning that whenever somebody tries to access the login and you're already authenticated, you will be redirected back to the home. Next, let's call on the next function here. Call the next function. Then let's go inside our register here. Now let's put the function we created here, comma. Let's also do the same for the login. Let's also do it for the get. Let's do the same for get for login as well. Now with this setup, we can go back. Let's refresh. Let's try to register again. Let's register with Joe praise joe@gmail.com. Okay, register. Now let's log in with Joshi with our password. Login, we are logged in. Now let's try to access sign up. You see, we are not able to access sign up because we are currently authenticated. Let's also try to access login. We cannot access because we are currently authenticated. Now let's try our logout to see if the logout is working. Alright, so we're able to log out. We can go home now because we are no longer authenticated. Go to login and also sign up because we are no longer authenticated. Okay, I think that's all for the tutorial. I have been able to implement the authentication system using Express.js framework inside Node.js. So probably in subsequent videos, what I can do, if you guys think I should do that, is to implement this same authentication system using a database, either Postgres SQL or MongoDB, even SQL. That's probably what I would do next time, to show you how to implement an authentication system inside Node.js with a database, because you can see that we are storing our users inside a variable, which is not the right way to do it. Just because we are building and developing, that's why we are applying that approach. When we are shipping, we have to integrate and implement it in such a way whereby all the data is stored inside the database. So I think that's all for this video. And if you have any questions, remember, you can always drop it in the comment section, like and share. I'll always be here to guide you and also respond to your questions. Until we meet again, is bye bye for now. I remain your humble servant, Joshyvibe. Guys, please remember, it's important to subscribe to help me grow. I really appreciate when you guys subscribe to my page. It helps me to grow and also motivates me to do more videos. Thank you as you do that.